So, sekali lagi kami ingin mengingatkan semua dalam sesi Zoom kita pada hari ini untuk menamakan semula nama skrin anda kepada convention yang kita selalu gunakan, iaitu dengan singkatan negeri yang anda berasal daripada dan juga nama anda secara yang anda hendak ditangkap. Hi everyone, I can see that we are now live on YouTube. Welcome to our 9th session of the National Youth Online Gathering. It's a happy and wonderful thing to see all of you again for the 9th session this year. We are happy to welcome all of you, although it's a very late session today. It's a very special day indeed because we are celebrating the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction on the 13th of October 2021. Happy to see all of you again. For any students who are joining us from YouTube, quickly jump on and register. You can find the links in Telegram to register and access the Zoom sessions for parents, teachers, and also VAD members of the team as sponsors. Kindly join us from YouTube instead so that we can have chances and slots for active participation of our young members on Zoom. It is the highest demographic of our volunteers. And while waiting, I'm going to give a special video to share on the special day for International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. Enjoy. All right, everyone. So yes, only together. So only together on the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction, we can achieve the Sendai 7 Targets campaign. Yeah, we will find out more today. What is the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction all about? We'll be teaching you some interesting new terminologies for related to disaster risk reduction. So for those who just joined us again, a kind reminder, keep your phones muted. Keep your microphones muted. And we encourage you to turn on cameras so that we can see you. And also to follow the naming convention to rename your screen name to the following convention of state abbreviation, followed by the name that you would like to be called. So to all our young volunteers, our young members from the secondary school student age range, we still have about less than 200 slots here on Zoom. So please kindly remind your friends, cikgu-cikgu, sila ingatkan para pelajar anda untuk sertai sesi Zoom kita pada hari ini. Ya, kita akan memulakan dalam sekejap lagi. Ya. Right. So while waiting again, we have another video for you to enjoy for the special day for the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. Alright, the video earlier was shown by the United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction Agency. So yes, the theme for this year is only together, of course. Only together can we achieve the global disaster risk reduction to reduce the risk of disasters occurring around the world. Each and every one of us play a very important part and role because each individual's action is a collective in order to reduce the risk of disaster. So today is a very special day indeed. It is something that is very important for the work of the Malaysian Red Crescent as well, in educating the public and of course our young members in schools on how to reduce the risk of disasters around the community and also in the school setting. And before we proceed, we also have 3 more videos to share with all of you today on some tips on how to stay safe. These are safe steps brought to you by our partners from Prudential and National.
My name is Manny Pacquiao. All my life I have been fighting to survive. I'm here to show you safe steps on how to prepare for natural disasters. Always be one step ahead of your opponent. Floods can come quickly, so monitor the weather closely and make sure you have supply. If there is a flood warning, turn off your electricity and gas and evacuate immediately. If you can't get out, get up. Make your way to higher ground. But remember, never walk, swim, or drive through flowing water. So if you are up against a flood, remember these safe steps and you too can be a survivor. For more knockout advice, visit our website, safesteps.com.
Earlier was just a short tips from our sponsors, from our partners from Prudential and also Prudential Foundation and also National Geographic, and our brand ambassador for Six Steps, which is Manny Pacquiao, a Filipino martial artist. So today, unfortunately, you have to settle with me. I will be the speaker for today. I'm sharing with all of you about disaster risk reduction and how youths can play a vital role in ensuring that we are able to achieve the Sendai frame. And what in us, what is the Sendai frame for? I will be sharing that with you once I finish the session. Again, my name is Gerald Ong. For those who are loyal subscribers, our loyal audience, definitely know me and probably it's tired of seeing me. But for those who are new to joining our session, don't worry, it's never too late. Better late than never. What's this? I'm Gerald Ong, and I'm the Deputy Chairperson of the National Youth Council, and have thus far been a 13-year volunteer since secondary school. So for the most of all of you, I have joined around the same time as all of you in secondary school, in Form 1. And so far now, I've enjoyed the volunteering life with the person. My volunteer. So before we kindly start, I know it's 8:05 already. Kindly rename yourselves according to the following naming convention. It will be very important for our facilitators to be able to call you and address you properly and to also know where you're coming from. Because there are there's many Muhammad Hafiz that we have, or there's many Chong Cheng Yang that we may have. So we also can able to differentiate, which Chong Cheng Yang or which Muhammad Hafiz we are referring to and following as well. It will be very important during our breakout sessions. Yes, we almost reached our 1,000 slots here in Zoom. So for those students who are joining us from YouTube, we still have a bit more slots. Do try to take up as much slots as you need. Do not waste this opportunity to join us live from Zoom, as you'll be able to participate directly in the activities and the sessions that we have planned for you later today. And with that, I will have one more video to share with you before we begin our session today on disaster risk reduction.
My name is Manny Pacquiao. All my life, I have been fighting to survive. I'm here to show you safe steps on how to prepare for natural disasters. Fire is one opponent you can't outrun, so practice your escape route. You need to knock out a small fire within the first 2 minutes. Make sure you know how. If your clothes catch fire, stop, drop, and roll to put out the flames. If there's a smoke, get down, cover your mouth with a wet towel or cloth, locate a safe exit, and get out. Then sound the alarm and call for help. So if you are up against a fire, remember these safe steps and you too can be a survivor. For more knockout advice, visit our website, safesteps.com.
Yes, indeed. Earlier were some safe steps that you can take during a fire, and most of us overlook these safe steps whenever we are in any building or in any situation. But fire is still one of the biggest threats, one of the biggest disasters that can happen to us if we do not know the safe steps to take when a fire breaks out. Not too long ago, I think many of you might still recall that in 2017 or so, a religious school, a Sekolah Tafiz, was caught fire, and many children were affected by that fire. And because there were several shortcomings of the systems in place, the early warning, and also the evacuation planning as well. So we must remember, no matter how trivial some fire drills or disaster drills may seem, it's very important for us because it only takes a split of a second for a disaster to happen and for lives and properties to be damaged. So I am your speaker again, Gerald Ong, coming to you live today to share with you today's topic for the topic for today, which is the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. And I think many of you may not realize, that the Malaysian Red Crescent is not just all about foot drill, marching on the parade grounds and doing first aid. One of the main jobs or the main role that the Malaysian Red Crescent plays is also to educate and to prepare our local communities in Malaysia in order to be aware of how to reduce the risk of disasters happening in Malaysia. So I'll be sharing with you today the understanding on what are the disaster terminologies that we commonly use in Malaysia, in disaster risk management. And second is we are going to introduce to you what is disaster risk management, and of course followed by what is actually the Sendai framework. What is this framework all about? And of course, as usual, we will have our breakout sessions where you will be able to understand better through activities that we have planned for you, and with our facilitators who are also spending their time this evening to join all of you to share and help you to understand better what is disaster risk reduction, followed by definitely the session that everyone is looking forward to, our Kahoot session, where you'll be able to win prizes from our sponsors, Outpost Uniforms Sendirian Berhad, or Camp and Apparel Sendirian Berhad, and also the closing of the conclusion of our today's session. So seperti mana yang saya telah cakap tadi, pada hari ini saya akan menerangkan beberapa istilah ataupun istilah-istilah bencana yang kami selalu guna dalam konteks pengurangan risiko bencana, dan juga memperkenalkan apa itu sebenarnya pengurusan risiko bencana, dan juga apa itu sebenarnya apa sebenarnya rangka kerja Sendai, diikuti dengan sesi breakout dan juga sesi Kahoot kami yang anda selalu nanti-nantikan. Alright, so let's begin with the first session, which is on disaster terminologies. So I will be introducing several terminologies and their definitions. The definitions itself are quite long, but I'll allow me to try to explain it to you in the most simplest manner so that all of you are able to grasp what are the different disaster terminologies that we use. And you will be surprised with some of the words that we think we know, but actually it has a different meaning about what we actually think we know. So let us begin. The first terminology that I'll be introducing to all of you is the terminology called hazards. So what is hazard? Yeah, the biblical or the dictionary definition is a hazard is a process, phenomenon, or human activity that may cause loss of life, injury, or other health impacts, property damage, social and economic disruption, or environmental degradation. So hazard, ya, apa itu hazard? Hazard dalam bahasa Malaysia ialah bahaya. Ya. Kita selalu ingat kita tahu apa itu bahaya. Tetapi sebenarnya bahaya itu adalah satu proses, fenomena ataupun aktiviti manusia yang mungkin mengakibatkan kehilangan nyawa, kecederaan ataupun impak kesihatan yang lain, kerosakan harta benda dan juga gangguan sosial dan ekonomik ataupun penghakisan ataupun pengurangan environment alam sekitar kami. Yeah. So in simpler terms, in trying to make you understand what is actually hazard, a hazard is actually an event of a process, either natural or human-made, that can cause harm to people, their belongings, and their environment as well. And if people do not take precautions, there are several things that can happen. Yeah. So there are of course loss of life, injuries, and so on and so forth. So there are different types of hazards. Some are natural, such as earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanoes, floods, droughts, landslides. As you can see down here, there are like listed 13 different hazards that are there in the world that we usually refer to. But others are also caused by people, known as technological or human-made hazards. These include pollution and traffic or factory accidents as well. Yeah, the last disaster in 2019, if I'm not wrong, the technological disaster that happened in Johor, Sungai Kim, so on and so forth, where there was a release of chemical in the air, affecting children, affecting students such as your age as well, falling ill, and and requiring medical attention. So these technological hazards are also present in Malaysia. Out of the 13 disasters listed here, I can say almost all of them are applicable to Malaysia. We have had landslides, we have had floods, we have had chemical, biological, radiological as well hazards that are happening. Heat waves have also happened in Malaysia, and of course, currently where everyone is experiencing a major pandemic that is going on in the world, which is COVID-19, and with the other epidemics in Malaysia, or what we call endemics, such as malaria, Nipah virus, so on and so forth, is also still currently happening in Malaysia. The ones that, of course, we don't have is, of course, extreme colds, but we never know with climate change happening around the world. Malaysia may soon experience that very soon. Wildfires as well, happening in Miri last year, if I'm not wrong, the year before that. Earthquakes in Sabah, in Ranau, where schools have been destroyed, buildings have been damaged, libraries and the roof collapsing in the libraries and the laboratories. If any of our friends joining us from Sabah would remember, from the area of Ranau, where of course we do not have hailstorms. We also have tsunami as well in the past, in 2004. States in Penang and Kedah were affected by a small portion of the tsunami that hit Penang and Kedah, but caused many destructions. And of course, drought is nothing new to Malaysia. We have experienced drought before. And now we've never had experienced tropical cyclones before in Malaysia, but due to climate change, the northern part of Malaysia in Penang and Perlis, if I'm not wrong, there were schools damaged as well because of tropical cyclones that are now happening in Malaysia as well. So you may ask, so actually, are hazards natural or actually human-made? Now, we say that a flood is natural, right? Most of the time, flood is a natural phenomenon. But sometimes a village floods or kampung banjir because humans were dumping their rubbish upstream in the river, or even cutting down trees along the river, which cause, degradation of the soil, erosion around it, and causing the water to rise. We also say that a wildfire is natural, but it may also have been caused by someone dropping a cigarette in the forest, causing that wildfire. So it's very, very difficult to say all hazards are natural. So most of them happen. Some of them happen naturally in nature, but most of the times, human intervention or human disruption in the ecosystem causes certain hazards to occur, such as what I've just explained earlier as well, right? So it's usually a combination of natural and human made activities that cause these hazards to occur. Now, what is a disaster and how is it different from a hazard? We always say, oh, disaster, disaster, disaster. Now, the textbook definition of a disaster is actually a serious disruption of the functioning of a community or a society at any scale due to hazardous events interacting with conditions of exposure, vulnerability, capacity, leading to one or more of the following: human, material, economic, and environmental losses and impacts. Wow, it's a very long and wordy definition. So, but let me try to put it in simpler terms, right? A disaster is technically just a really, really bad event, right? When lots of people are hurt or killed and their belongings are damaged or destroyed, okay? When a disaster happens, local communities often cannot cope on their own. They cannot handle it by themselves. National governments, like in Malaysia, the federal government, and the local authorities, the state government must support people when disaster strikes. Often, people also need help from their neighbors, right, and friends in other areas or in other parts of the country or even in other countries. When this happens, we say that the community's capacity has been exceeded. Okay, so the definition of disaster risk reflects the concept of hazardous events and disasters as the outcome of continuously present conditions of risk. Yeah. So the next terminology that I will be introducing is, what is capacity, you may ask? So capacity is the combination of all the strengths, attributes, and resources available within an organization, such as the Malaysian Red Crescent, a community, such as in a local area, like in Batu Berendam in Malacca, or in Simpang Renggam somewhere, right? Or a society as a whole, right? A whole state, a whole nation in Malaysia, all right? To manage and reduce disaster risks and strengthen resilience. So to try to simplify it as well, so capacity means all the strengths, resources, and the ideas that people in the local communities have to protect themselves. What is your own capacity, right? And their belongings, to protect themselves and their belongings against the effects of a disaster. Capacities may also include infrastructure, institution, human knowledge and skills, and collective attributes such as social relationships, leadership, and management. So all of us have different capacities to manage certain kind of events or hazards happening in our lives, right? But do we have the capacity to cope, to manage, to overcome the hazards that happen in our lives? So this is what the definition of capacity. And what is vulnerability? Another terminology. So vulnerability is the conditions determined by physical, social, economic, and environmental factors or processes which increases the susceptibility of an individual, the community, assets, or systems to the impacts of hazards. Yeah. So some things make people or communities, cities, or countries more likely than others to experience harmful effects of a hazard. This is what we call vulnerability. People might be vulnerable for one or a combination of reasons. For example, being old, sick, pregnant, or having a disability makes some people in our community more vulnerable, right? So because a very able-bodied person can probably run faster from a wildfire, right, that is happening than let's say your grandmother, right? Because she's older, she's slower, she has lesser capacity. She is more vulnerable to certain hazards that are happening in your area. So in your case, you can survive, right? You can outrun the wildfire. The wildfire happens very quickly, but it doesn't happen without warning. It takes time to reach you, but you have the capacity to run faster or to get out of the area faster than probably your elder family members in your family, right? So people might be especially vulnerable also because they can't read the warning notices or understand the messages on the radio, right? Imagine if it's it's an undocumented immigrant in Malaysia and has not, studied or learned Bahasa Malaysia, and most of our TV, our radio announcements are being made in Bahasa, right? So kalau kita tak faham bahasa ataupun message yang disampaikan oleh pihak berkuasa tentang sesuatu bencana yang berlaku, what's going to happen, right? That person will not know what's happening. So that's also a vulnerability in terms of language. Living right by the river in badly constructed buildings might also make you vulnerable, and so might living in a new area where you don't know your way around or speak the local language. So people who are poor are generally the most vulnerable. Why? For example, they don't have a choice as to where they live, right? Because they can't simply pick and choose which house they want to buy or where they want to build or with what materials they want to build their house with, because sometimes they also need to live close to the place that they work, or they cannot afford stronger materials to build the houses. Also, poor people also are more vulnerable and often have not been taught how to prevent a hazard from turning into a disaster, or how to respond when a disaster strikes, right? Because they don't have the luxury of the time to learn or to be exposed to different kinds of information as well. So the local police, PDRM, the fire department, Bomba, and the local governments have a very important role to play in making sure that vulnerable people are not so exposed. And how they can do that, we will learn later on by enacting building codes, into ensuring that poor people have proper housing, adequate housing, so on and so forth. So these are what vulnerability is all about. Alright, kalau dalam bahasa Malaysia kita panggil kerentanan, ya, orang yang paling rentan dalam komuniti kita mempunyai kerentanan ataupun risiko yang paling tinggi untuk sesuatu berlaku kepada mereka. And what is exposure? So exposure is the situation of people, infrastructure, housing, production capacities, and other tangible human assets located in a hazard-prone area. So exposure is basically the number of people, the number of buildings within a specific area. For example, the Klang Valley, right? So the Klang Valley is a valley and has a very high risk of flooding, right? But there is also increased exposure because why? There is millions of people living in a Klang Valley. There's millions of infrastructures, housing, schools, hospitals, so on and so forth in this particular area that is in a hazard-prone area. So it is higher exposure in certain areas in certain of the country where hazards tend to occur. So when we talk about exposure, we mean the number of people and the belongings who face risk in hazard zones. Things like climate change and more people coming to live in an area can increase exposure. Measures of exposure can also include the number of people or the types of assets in an area. These can be combined, with the specific vulnerability and capacity of the exposed elements to any particular hazard to estimate the quantitative risk associated with that hazard in the area of interest. Okay, I see some people who are trying to request remote control of the screen. Kindly do not do so. If not, I will request the organizers to remove you from the Zoom session. And bear with me, this is the last term that I'm going to teach and share with all of you, which is what is disaster risk. Apa itu risiko bencana? So disaster risk is the potential loss of life, injury, or destroy or damage assets which could occur to a system, to environment, a society, or a community in a specific period of time. Yeah, determined probabilistically as a function of hazard, exposure, vulnerability, and capacity. So how do we measure disaster risk? It's a combination of knowing what are the possible hazards that are happening in a particular area, the exposure of it, how many people are in the area, that is going to be exposed to this hazard, what are the vulnerabilities within that community, within that area, in terms of old people, people with disabilities, poor people, building structures that are not up to code, houses that are not raised in a flood-prone area, or houses that are not, or buildings that are not reinforced in earthquake-prone areas, and also the capacity. What is the capacity of this community to be able to cope, right? Do they have enough fire services or the hospital services, healthcare services, so on and so forth within an area to cope with the demand of if a disaster strikes, will they be able to cope with the demand of the need of the disaster? So risk is the chance that a hazard will turn into a disaster, technically, right? We can't always prevent hazards, right? We can't stop earthquakes, right? We can't always stop earthquakes. We can't stop volcanoes from erupting, right? We can't stop tsunamis from happening, right? But we can reduce the chances of hazards becoming disasters. So what do you mean by this? So for a volcano, we can have early warning systems that if we know that the volcano is going to erupt, we put alarms around the community living around the volcano. If we have a tsunami coming, we can put detection buoys or sensors in the oceans to detect a huge wave coming, and we can warn the population on the coast or along the sea to quickly evacuate to higher ground. So those are the things that we can do, right? So this is what actually disaster risk reduction is all about, right? For example, we can be also in certain ways or with certain materials that will make houses and schools less likely to fall down in a hurricane, or to stop cutting down trees so that less lives are less likely to happen. So these are the things that we can do to reduce the risk of a disaster happening. With disaster risk reduction also helps communities and countries in the long term. What we call sustainable development, right? If you've heard of the SDGs or the Sustainable Developmental Goals that we have from the United Nations. So, for example, a river that is kept clean because people do not throw their rubbish into the river is less likely to cause a big flood in a village. But also better in the long term. Why? Because the clean water in the river is healthier for people to drink, cook, and wash, and there will be more fish for the local villagers to eat and sell at the market. The definition of disaster risk reflects the concept of hazardous events and disasters as the outcome of continuously present conditions of risk. Disaster risk comprises different types of potential losses, which are often difficult to quantify. Nevertheless, with knowledge of the prevailing hazards and the patterns of population and socio-economic development, disaster risk can also be assessed and met in broad terms at least. So last time we always talk about disaster management, disaster response, so on and so forth. But now what we are trying to move a step better than that is to be more sustainable in a way such that we even before. We don't want to manage disasters. We want to manage the risk of disasters happening by being proactively taking steps to ensure that we reduce the chances of a disaster happening. So we can definitely simplify all of these terminologies that we have just learned in this context of disaster risk and disaster equations. So disaster risk basically equals to the hazards that are present in a certain area, multiplied by the exposure, the number of people that is there, and also multiplied by the vulnerability over the capacity of the community being able to respond, is what we call the disaster risk. Is it high or is it low, right? What is a disaster technically? Also, it equates to the hazards, the natural or the human-made phenomena that happen, plus the number of vulnerable people in a certain area as well, and the inability of the local resources to cope. The police, the hospitals, and Bomba and the fire brigade cannot handle the number of destruction, the number of people who are injured or sick or dying, will equate to disaster because of the vulnerable people, right? People who do not have high immunity in COVID context, people who are having other what we call comorbidities or other illnesses coupled with COVID makes it more complicated for people to survive. And along with the hazard, which is the pandemic, a virus circulating in a community can equate to a disaster. So these are all the terminologies listed here. Risk, the possibility of loss, injury, death, or other consequences. Hazard is actually a destructive phenomenon or event. Exposure, the duration, how long a disaster, how long a hazard occurs, such as this pandemic, it's happening for more than a year, and also the extent of the hazard, how large an area is it affecting, or how small an area is it affecting. It equates to the exposure of the people in a certain area, or the property or the infrastructure in a certain area. Vulnerability is the susceptibility to damage or harm caused by a hazard, and capacity is the ability to respond to the needs created by a disaster. So these are the equations and the terminologies that all of us should know so that we can take our necessary steps to reduce the risk of disasters happening. Next, I'm going to be sharing about what is disaster risk management, right? And it's pretty straightforward as well. What you see is the disaster risk management cycle, where you have, the preparedness phase, and then the disaster strikes, and then the response phase, the recovery phase, and the mitigation phase, so on and so forth. Now, we can never break this cycle because, as we said, human activities cause hazards or hazards to occur, which will become disasters in a sense. But we try our best to reduce the risk of the disasters happening, or even prepare a lot to save as many lives and properties and infrastructure that we have in order to reduce the loss of life and destruction happening because of a hazard. So one is on the mitigation phase. So what can we do in the mitigation phase? The mitigation phase is where we reduce the impact of a hazard or the impact of the disaster happening. And we do this by hazard mapping. So in a local area, we need to find out what are the potential hazards that can happen. So if you stay by the seaside, there's a risk of soil erosion. There's also a risk of tsunamis happening, so on and so forth. If you live near a volcano, of course, the hazard is a volcanic eruption. Although a volcano may be very dormant, or is very active, that there's chances that the volcano will erupt. If you live near a mountain or a hill, right, there's a possibility of landslides or mudslides happening. So we need to identify what are the hazards around our community. And I'm sure all of you know your community and your surroundings very well, and you can easily do this mapping. We can also adopt and enforce, the land use and zoning practices. This is mainly the work of the local municipalities, your local DBKL, or your local MBMB in Malacca, Majlis Bandaraya, all the local Majlis Bandaraya, Dewan Bandaraya, so on and so forth, needs to enforce and adopt, the land use and zoning practices. Implementing and enforcing building codes, this is all under BOMBA jurisdiction and KPKT, so on and so forth, to ensure that the building is safe and is up to standards. Floodplain mapping, reinforced tornado. In Malaysia, we don't have tornado, but maybe in the future we will have cyclone safe rooms as well. Raising of homes in flood-prone areas. So Malaysia is quite common. Rumah-rumah kampung kita selalu dinaikkan kan, is on stilts, and also climate change mitigation steps that we can take as well. So this is what we usually do as well in the Red Cross and Red Crescent, which is the mitigation as well. Apart from that, we are also doing, in the preparation phase, the preparedness phase, a lot of activities as well. So this is increasing the capacity that in being prepared, we increase the capacities of our local communities by teaching them how to be more resilient, right? To giving them or teaching them or equipping them with skills and survival and life skills, such as first aid training, We teach them how to establish early warning systems. Kalau di sungai kita letak the pengukur, right? The pengukur aras sungai supaya kita tahu tahap mana kita patut berwaspada, kita patut awas supaya bila kita sudah sampai ke satu tahap yang agak berbahaya, kita hendaklah memberi amaran awal kepada komuniti atau penduduk yang tinggal setempat, ya. The dissemination to the community of disaster evacuation plans, right? How many kampungs or how many taman perumahan yang ada plan-plan tindakan pengungsian bencana, right? So we don't know if something happen in our kampung, if something happen in our taman perumahan, apa kita nak buat? Mana kita nak lari? Ke mana kita nak lari? We need to have these plans, right? So that apabila bencana berlaku, kita sudah tahu apa kita perlu buat sebagai individu supaya kita dapat mengurangkan kehilangan nyawa dan juga kerosakan harta benda as well, right? So floods and all, we need to be aware of what we need to do, how we need to prepare for floods, and so on and so forth, and other hazards that happen. Kita pun kena jalankan community disaster simulations. How many kampung, or how many sekolah, or how many taman perumahan do this simulation, right? Mengadakan simulasi bencana supaya kita dapat melaksanakan plan-plan kita secara betul, supaya kita dapat menambah baikkan plan kita dan juga strategi kita dalam menangani apa-apa jenis bahaya atau apa jenis bencana yang mungkin berlaku dalam komuniti kita. And also to have vulnerable capacity assessments, which is a team of trained volunteers in the Malaysian Red Crescent to turun padang, melihat kawasan, membuat penilaian tentang apa kerentanan kita, komuniti kita, dan juga apa kapasiti yang kita ada supaya kita dapat menangani kerentanan yang berlaku dalam komuniti kita. And also logistics preparation, right? In the Malaysian Red Crescent, we pre-position a lot of equipments as well. We pre-position, what we call hygiene kits, so that kalau bencana berlaku di Perlis, contohnya bantuan-bantuan bencana tidak perlulah datang daripada Port Klang, kan, jauh dari Perlis ke Port Klang. So kita sudah ada satu hub ataupun satu gudang, contohnya di Pulau Pinang ke atau di Kedah, supaya lebih dekat mereka boleh hantar terus bantuan bencana kepada mereka. So ini persiapan logistik yang kita patut buat dalam fasa persiapan kita juga, kesiapsiagaan bencana kita. Alright. In response, of course, is all the regular activities that the Malaysian Red Crescent does. Yeah, we have ambulance services, we have search and rescue, we have people setting up pusat pemindahan. Yeah, so we got this is the emergency operations phase. Kita aktifkan early warning system yang kita ada. Contohnya alarm, siren, pengumuman bencana, siren-siren yang mungkin ada di kawasan pesisiran pantai di Kedah. Ya, memang ada sistem sistem warning tentang bahaya tsunami yang mungkin melanda di kawasan tersebut. Ya, we do search and rescue, relief item distribution. Kita mengagihkan bantuan-bantuan bencana seperti kit kebersihan, ya, kit masak, ya, pet ataupun kit makanan dan sebagainya. Of course, we also run our emergency water and sanitation facilities, where pasukan air dan sanitasi Bulan Sabi Merah Malaysia membina ataupun menyediakan, ya, prasarana seperti tandas ataupun tempat mandi untuk memastikan, ya, kebersihan komuniti dapat dikekalkan, kebersihan diri, ya. Emergency healthcare dalam aktiviti yang kita buat sekarang juga ialah dalam program vaksinasi, supaya sebelum sesuatu virus ataupun sesuatu penyakit melanda, kita memastikan jika ada apa-apa vaksin yang kita ada, kita cepat-cepat vaksinkan komuniti kita. Contohnya macam polio yang lama, kan, typhoid, malaria dan sebagainya. Sekarang juga banyak lebih vaksin yang sedang diciptakan untuk memastikan kita tidak lagi menderita akibat penyakit-penyakit yang berjangkit. And also psychosocial support services, ya, perkhidmatan sokongan psychosocial untuk memberi, sebab salah satu one of the huge impacts of disasters is, of course, mental health, right? Mental health matters, right? Tak guna jika badan kita semua sihat tetapi kesihatan mental kita tidak terjaga, ya. Kita secara mental, kesihatan mental tidak rasa sihat, kita akan secara amnya rasa murung dan tidak mempunyai motivasi untuk meneruskan hidup dan sebagainya. So kita mesti, kita sebagai pasukan bulan sampai Malaysia juga menyediakan perkhidmatan sebegini, iaitu Red Crescent for You, talian hotline kita juga, dan dalam fasa pandemik kita juga memastikan, ya, banyak orang yang menderita, banyak orang yang terkurung dalam rumah ataupun banyak orang yang menghadapi, ya, kesusahan hidup juga dapat meluahkan perasaan, dapat berkongsikan pengalaman ataupun kesusahan mereka kepada orang yang boleh mendengar apa saja yang mereka ingin katakan kepada sukarelawan-sukarelawan kami yang terlatih untuk menangani situasi tersebut. And of course, in the recovery phase, fasa pemulihan is of course the continuing psychosocial support. Orang yang mati, ahli keluarga yang mati, kita perlu memastikan mereka diberikan sokongan, ahli keluarga yang tertinggal ataupun yang pemandiri, yang survive daripada situasi yang berlaku, resilient settlement rebuilding. So jika contohnya di Sabah, bila gempa bumi berlaku, adakah kita mengubah cara pembinaan kita? Adakah kita mengubah sikap kami dalam pembinaan sesuatu bangunan, ataupun kita tetap sama je bangunkan bangunan yang tiada, ya, elemen keselamatan ataupun elemen keselamatan untuk menangani, ya, gempa bumi yang berlaku. Sekolah-sekolah kita terutamanya, ya. Cash based assistance, kita memberi, ya, bantuan kewangan sebab kesusahan yang melanda, penjanaan ekonomi terganggu dan sebagainya. Livelihood programs, restoring family links, community engagement and accountability. Semuanya dalam fasa pemulihan supaya kita dapat cuba memulangkan semula kehidupan orang-orang yang terkesan kepada kehidupan normal mereka sebelum bencana itu berlaku. So these are very important phases of the disaster risk management as well. Sekarang, I have an activity for you. So this activity is called a Go Back Scavenger Hunt activity. So I will give you later some time to carry out this activity, but for now, please listen to the instructions that I'm about to give you. So this is a scenario, right? A major disaster is about to occur, and the local authorities have issued an immediate evacuation order in your area. You only have a short amount of time to grab items that are important for you for your evacuation. Now, later on, I'm going to start the timer. I'm only going to give you 2 minutes to carry out this activity. So think quickly. You can run. You can get up from your seats, from your computers, from your mobile phones, from your iPads, from your tablets, and go around your house to quickly locate items that are very important for your evacuation, right? So dalam bahasa Melayu, saya akan cepat-cepat terangkan. Kita akan buat satu aktiviti sekarang. Suatu bencana besar bakal berlaku dan pihak berkuasa tempatan telah mengisytiharkan satu pengungsian di kawasan anda. Anda hanya ada jangka masa yang pendek bagi mengumpul barang-barang yang penting untuk pengungsian anda. Saya akan berikan anda semua masa 2 minit dan kita akan start countdown timer sekejap lagi, dan anda semua dialu-alukan untuk tinggalkan komputer riba kamu, telefon bimbit anda dan juga tablet anda untuk pergi cari semua barang yang anda perlukan untuk pengungsian anda. Right? And your time starts now. You have 2 minutes, guys. Please leave your cameras. Pergi cari barang-barang yang penting untuk pengungsian anda. Apa yang semua rasa penting? What do you think is important for you to evacuate, right? Do you have things that you already know that you need to grab and go? Dan setelah anda ambil, sila pulang, ya, ke komputer anda, dan kita akan teruskan sesi kita, ya. So please, once you have located all of your items, please come back and have the items in front of you, and kita akan bincang bersama apa yang anda telah kumpulkan. Right, quickly, 2 minit. Kamu ada, semua anda ada 1 minit 10 saat lagi, ya. Quickly, need to go. Right, disaster is happening, guys. You need to go, grab your stuff. You have about 1 minute left. 1 minute left for you to grab the items that are important for you. So, grab your items. do you grab? What is important for you? What is vital for your survival? Right? You grab your stuff and get out of the house. So what items do you grab? Once you have grabbed your items, you come back to your computers, you come back to your phones, you come back to your tablets, and we will discuss and share what have you gathered. Right? Dulu jap saya nampak ada beberapa adik sudah tunjuk barang apa yang dia ambil. Tunggu dulu, kita akan bincang bersama ya. Kita akan bincang bersama. Kumpulkan je apa barang yang anda rasa penting untuk kelangsungan hidup anda bila anda lari daripada belakang. Right, 5 seconds left. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, time is up. Okay, so can we have the organizers allow people to type in the chat? Now, I would like everyone to share what are some of the items that you have gathered. And I would like you to type in the chat, because I'm sorry, I'm not able to see everyone's camera. I can only see a small number of people's camera. Ada. All right, I can see the comments now pouring in. All right, too fast. Okay, I'll try to follow up. I see. All right, I see. Identification card, kad pengenalan. Air. Macam mana kamu simpan air tu? Dalam apa? Sijil, pasport. Uish, ada orang sudah nak keluar negara ni. Border sudah buka, semua nak ambil pasport dan nak cabut pergi mana ni? Surat adat beranak, betul. Alright, I see birth certificates. Apa lagi? Laptop, money, tablet, iPhone. iPhone, telefon bimbit sangat penting kan? Certificate pun nak ambil ke? Boleh lah kalau nak ambil certificate. Or is it, are you talking about certificate vaksin, sijil vaksin ke? Itu penting, betul. Alright, earphone, bring myself. Okay, betul. Sijil kematian, belum mati sudah ada sijil ke? Card holder, money, food, torchlight. Okay, some are very good. Tissue, I can see. Papi pun yang nak bawa. Okay, boleh lah. Orang semua sayangkan your pets, right? You love your pets animal, right? Bank cards, okay. Vaccine card, my family, charger, yes. Bawa telefon bimbit, tak bawa charger pun tak guna kan? Lepas tu bateri mati. Apa lagi? Boyfriend pun ada. Boyfriend pun macam mana nak cari dia? Cepat ke? Sempat ke? Ada yang cakap Al-Quran. Okay, bagus. Ni orang beriman ni. Bagus sangat. Nak jadi ustaz ke kali-kali? Ini bakal ustaz ke? Okay. Alright, medicines, face mask. Yep, very important. Buku teks pun. Buku teks bagus lah cikgu-cikgu. Boleh dengar lah. Mereka ni kuat belajar sangat. Homework pun dia bawa. Ini dah bukan sikit. Okay. But alright, it's fun. It's okay. No worries. Kita main-main sikit. Kita jangan terlalu serius sangat. So, mari kita lihat sebenarnya apa beberapa barang yang kita patut bawa semasa dalam pengungsian kita atau evakuasi kita, ya. So, welcome back everyone. So, I'm sure that most of you have the items that we have listed here. I hope that you have as well. So, these are some of the items that we can have or should have, that we should have in our grab bag, right? So, earlier I just showed you, right, how unprepared we are. If right at this second, 2 minutes, I'm given and I have to get out of my house. I need to evacuate myself and go to a safe spot. Do I have a bag ready? Do I have a kit ready? Adakah anda sudah ada satu bag yang tersedia untuk kamu ambil dan lari saja? Alright, ataupun satu kit. Alright, we don't have. So this is something that we would like to highlight. In dalam fasa ataupun dalam fasa persediaan kita mesti ada satu bag yang kita ambil je, kita tahu apa barang kita ada dan barang semua dalam bag itu semua keperluan kita. So these are some of the material. So one, kita patut ada flashlight. Alright. Yes, korang cakap telefon kita pun sudah ada flashlight, buat apa kita nak beli flashlight lagi? Kadang-kadang kita tak cukup bateri kan. Kalau satu telefon guna semua barang, semua fungsi, kita tak cukup bateri lah untuk telefon kita kan. Berapa besar, berapa capacity power bank kamu pun tak cukup kan. 20,000 milliamp pun tak cukup. So patut ada flashlight, ya. Can opener, battery power radio. Kenapa ada battery power radio? Kita sudah ada telefon, right? Kadang-kadang menara telefon tu, signal tu tak ada. So kita masih bergantung pada radio kan. Radio menggunakan gelombang radio, dia tak ikut telefon, line telefon, right? Different, right? First aid kit very important ya. First aid kit yang mengandungi semua ubat-ubatan yang penting pada keluarga anda. Jika anda menghidapi penyakit asma, kamu kena patut bawa Ventolin kamu ya. Alright. Dan lain-lainnya, jika anda ada masalah jantung, keluarga kamu ada masalah jantung, kena bawa ubat jantung semua dan sebagainya. BTS album, kenapa orang nak bawa? Okay, tak apa. I will try to remove the chat. Banyak yang sudah ni. Alright, I know you're all excited. So spare batteries, very important, right? Spare batteries, it's important. Your passport or your ID card, right? Some form of identification, important documents is very important. So that apabila polis tanya ke, askar tanya, kamu boleh tunjukkan adakah kamu warga negara, bukan warga negara dan sebagainya. Toiletries, right? Barang-barang kebersihan diri seperti ubat gigi, berus gigi, hygiene products, okay, for female, kepada yang perempuan perlukan tuala wanita or sanitary pads. So you can you need to prepare those items in the bag. Of course, beberapa salinan pakaian ya. So takkan kamu nak mengungsi, kamu tak bawa pakaian langsung. So apa saja yang kamu pakai, kamu nak pakai untuk berapa hari kan? So you must have some spare clothes and footwear in case kamu pakai slipper, kamu boleh tukar kepada boots ataupun running shoes yang you ada. Alright, ataupun shoe yang you ada sekarang mungkin basah, mungkin sudah koyak ataupun rosak semasa perjalanan pengungsian anda during your evacuation. So you have a spare pair of shoes. Right? You can also have cash, very important kan. So banyak orang guna e-wallet, semua orang guna debit card semua. But dalam bencana semua benda tu pun tak boleh pakai. So cash is very important ya. Wang tunai sangat penting ya. Kita selalu cakap kan, cash is king kan. Apabila bencana berlaku, elektrik tak ada, line tak ada, 4G tak ada. So kita kena guna cash. Kita tak boleh e-wallet, tak boleh duit now, semua tu dah tak fungsi dah. Orang tak laku dah. Yeah? So kita kena sediakan beberapa wang tunai dalam bag kita juga. Multi-tool, okay? This can be a Swiss Army knife or a multi-tool ya. So yang ada beberapa jenis alat yang anda boleh guna, itu Swiss Army knife. Kamu nampak di sini ya. And then of course very important ya, duct tape. Yeah, duct tape is a very multi-purpose tool. Duct tape tu sebenarnya sejenis pita pelekat yang boleh menggam atau menyambung mana apa-apa barang pun yang kita selalu gunakan, yang biasa dalam warna tu kelabu sikit dia punya ni. Alright, duct tape, kita of course kita ada telefon bimbit semua kan, kita selalu bawa kan. Power bank and phone charger lah sangat penting. So kadang-kadang kita tak tahu, you tahulah kan, kita punya kabel charger selalu hilang, tak tahu entah ke mana dah. So kita kena sediakan satu backup power bank and phone charger in our grab bag as well. Ini kita panggil satu grab bag or a go bag. Okay, kita grab and go atau kita go bag. Kita ambil and go. Okay. Whistle sangat penting untuk menarik perhatian ya, penyelamat yang berada di sekitar kita dalam operasi mencari dan menyelamat. Okay, kalau kamu terperangkap dalam bangunan yang runtuh, sangat penting ya. Ataupun kamu hanyut dalam kawasan yang banjir ataupun dalam tsunami kamu hanyut, kamu boleh tiupkan whistle untuk dapatkan perhatian ya para penyelamat. Sleeping bag optional, or you can bring kita panggil satu emergency blanket, satu selimut kecemasan, iaitu macam satu selimut yang sangat nipis, yang seperti aluminium foil, aluminium sheet is a blanket but can keep warm, can attract light, can attract attention because it reflects light very well. Alright. Games or toys for our kalau kamu ada adik-adik yang kecil, kalau kamu sendiri ada mainan soft toy yang anda suka, ini sangat penting lah untuk kesihatan mental kita kan.
Ada yang kata nak bawa bantal busuk juga.
Bantal busuk pun boleh lah, tapi takkan kita nak simpan bantal busuk sepanjang masa dalam tu kan. So ada backup lah, backup punya bantal busuk kalau ada. Okay, alright, boleh juga, alright. And of course very important lah, backpack lah, satu bag yang boleh simpan semua barang-barang ini. Dan sangat penting juga, alright, bonus ialah makanan, ya, makanan sangat penting. Okay, bila kita lari atau evacuate from a location, you should have some canned food sebab dia tahan lama kan, kita simpan dalam bag, kita letak di satu tempat yang kita senang untuk capai. Jangan pula pergi simpan bag yang mengandungi semua barang penting ni dalam almari kamu, dalam tempat yang sangat terselak dalam jauh dalam sembunyi kan. Sebab bila bencana berlaku, kau dah lupa entah kamu letak bag ni di mana, right? So please put this bag in a very reachable and accessible area so that whenever disaster occurs, you know where to grab this bag. Alright, canned food is very important, and water, right? For at least 3 days, right? Kita selalu sediakan ya bag atau kit kita sekurang-kurangnya cukup, sekurang-kurangnya untuk 3 hari. Okay? That is the average time of how should I say? The average time that we need to reach another location or to access or reach facilities such as the pusat pemindahan ataupun if we are trapped or we are lost, 3 days is usually the average time that rescuers will take to locate and to rescue us. So 3 days is the usual. So cukup makanan dan air untuk 3 hari, cukup pakaian untuk 3 hari, cukup kita punya kebersihan diri untuk 3 hari dan sebagainya. Ya. And very important also to ensure that your passport and your ID cards or salinan at least, alright, is kept in a ziplock bag, right? So apabila kita bag ni jatuh ke dalam air ke apa, adalah satu sampo yang kalis air supaya dokumen kita tidak basah dan tidak dapat digunakan, dan juga barang-barang elektrik yang kita ada seperti power bank, radio dan sebagainya. Alright, so very important lah. Of course kita tak senaraikan sini telefon bimbit lah, sebab telefon bimbit kamu kena tahulah untuk ambil lah, unless kamu semua kaya sangat ada telefon bimbit ekstra lah dalam rumah. Alright. So I hope you are clearer now on the importance of having a grab bag, a go bag, right? So if you just in the scenario earlier, if you're only given 2 minutes, what will you grab actually, right? You have so many things you want to grab, but you don't know where to begin. And then by the time you know it, you have no more chance to escape your house or to escape your building because, a tsunami is happening or an earthquake is happening or fire is happening, so on and so forth, right? So now I'm going to introduce to you what is the Sendai framework, right? Apa sebenarnya ni rangka kerja Sendai? Right, now that you know about hazards, you know what are disasters, you know what are vulnerability, you know what is exposure, and you know what is risk, we can now talk about the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. So let us explore. So what is it for? What is the Sendai framework for, right? I'll be explaining. So the Sendai framework applies to all kinds of hazards, natural and human-made. It also applies to everyone, everywhere, right? Tak kira lah, national and local governments, communities and families all over the world is applicable to them, right? So governments and leaders have an important responsibility to protect people, but everyone does too. So close communities where everyone listens and looks out for each other, all right, are less vulnerable to disasters and more resilient whenever disasters strike. So we care more for each other, we look out more for each other. These are the communities that stay strong together, right? And are able to cope and manage whenever disaster happens. So what is actually new about the Sendai framework? Now, before the Sendai framework, there was another framework, right? There was another international plan or international document to reduce disaster losses or disaster damages, which was what we call the Hyogo framework. Kenapa semua ni nama-nama seperti Jepun? Because kebanyakan conference, kebanyakan perjumpaan mesyuarat yang diadakan ni adalah di Jepun. Alright, negara yang paling kerap berlaku bahaya seperti gempa bumi, tsunami, right? Semua dikenali, semua orang tahu Jepun banyak gempa bumi dan banyak tsunami, right? So why are all these names Japanese? Because most of these international agreements and these international plans are usually the meetings, the venues of these meetings and discussions are usually held in Japan, right? So before the Sendai framework was the Hyogo framework for action, and it was developed and agreed on by governments, international agencies such as the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent, disaster experts and others in 2005, following the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, right? Maybe most of you baru saja lahir in 2004, right? And the Sendai framework builds on these good ideas and introduces new important one. So what is new? It emphasizes the importance of disaster risk management as compared to disaster management. And as we know, a hazard doesn't have to be a disaster, right? Satu fenomena yang semula jadi ataupun yang mungkin diakibatkan oleh manusia tidak semestinya menjadi sesuatu bencana, right? If a earthquake happens in an area yang there is no one living in that area, right? There is no building, there is no town, there is no kampong in the area, and a hazard occurs, it's not a disaster, right? But if an earthquake happens in the middle, and the epicenter is at Kuala Lumpur city center, right? It's a very big disaster. Why? Because a lot of people are living there. There's a lot of buildings, a lot of destruction, a lot of lives will be affected, right? The risk is the chance that it will become a disaster. So paying lots of attention to risk and how to reduce them is a good way to stop the hazards turning into a disaster in the first place. That's how we stop hazards becoming disasters in the first place. Nothing is a disaster until, you know, the vulnerability, the capacity of the community to respond and so on and so forth is overwhelmed, right? Is overwhelmed, yeah. So the Sendai framework sets out 7 clear global targets and speaks about how to check that we are actually achieving them. What is the checklist? How are we achieving these 7 targets? And I'll be explaining a bit later as we go through the 7 targets. Apart from that, the Sendai framework also talks about the bigger range, right? The bigger range of hazards. As we know, hazards can be natural or human-made, and we need to think about lots of possible dangers, right? Also, the Sendai framework also talks about health and education as an important part of resilience, right? Making sure that people in your community are healthy and informed before the hazard, and that they know how to stay healthy and access information means they are less vulnerable. With knowledge, there is power. With knowledge, you know, we can reduce, people know what to do, we can reduce people from taking the wrong steps, right? Just like with safe steps, right? We give you the tips, we give you the steps of what to do and what to take, and that will increase your chance of survival and the steps that you will know what to do when a disaster occurs. The Sendai framework also pays attention to the role everyone has to play, right? It's not just the job of your teachers to take care of your safety, right? To help you whenever disaster. It's not just the job of your parents. It's not just the jobs of governments or leaders. It's also yourself, your own responsibility. What do you do to educate yourself, to prepare yourself, to equip yourself with knowledge and skills, right? To make sure that the plan becomes a reality. And it doesn't just talk about governments and local leaders knowing what to do. Disaster risk reduction is everybody's business. All right, it's not just something that any bukan kerja saya, it's everyone's job. So then what is your role, right? As a youth of the Malaysian Red Crescent, or as a normal youth as well, right? Worldwide, around the world, there are 3.8 billion people under the age of 30, which is the category of the youth, right? We have 7.9 billion people around the world, and 3.8 of them are youths, people like you, people in secondary school, people in universities, people, young adults who are working below the age of 30. There's 3.8 billion, right? It's almost more than half, right? It's definitely more than half. So people need to listen to you, to the youths, right? Experience shows that youths have a unique knowledge and ideas about the risk in their communities, right? You know the risk in your communities better than anyone else and how to address them, right? You have the right to be heard and to participate in decision affecting your life, decision making affecting your lives, right? Whoever you are and wherever you are. And when youths are at the center of disaster risk reduction in groups or even as individuals, as a group of friends or even individually, activities are for the youth and by the youth, right? We in Malaysian Red Crescent, we have certain programs that are specifically targeted at school students, such as youth in school safety is one of the aspects. We have the integrated school preparedness program for floods and so on and so forth. So there are many activities that we do, and we plan to roll out again once the pandemic is over, so that we can have face-to-face interactions, which is more valuable and cherished. And youth-centered disaster risk reduction can enable the fulfillment of every important rights, including your rights to life, education, and health. Governments, agencies, and other people in your communities need to listen to you, to your point of view, so that you are better protected, and so that your energy, knowledge, and ideas can help protect everyone, right? The ideas and innovation that the youth can come up with doesn't only protect the youth, it protects everyone in our community. So what does the Sendai framework expect you to do, right? So when the plan is implemented by people like you, it will mean that fewer disasters, it will be less severe, and people will recover faster. Most importantly, future disasters will take fewer lives, fewer jobs, right, that threaten your way of life as well, and cause less damage to farms, homes, health, and the environment. This will mean that disasters will have less serious and less expensive long-term impacts for everyone. And what is the overall goal of the Sendai framework? Which is technically to prevent new and reduce existing disaster risk through implementation of integrated and inclusive economic, structural, legal, social, health, cultural, educational, environmental, technological, political, and institutional measures that prevent and reduce hazard exposure and vulnerability to disasters, increase preparedness for response and recovery, and thus strengthen resilience. So, what are the 7 targets, right? So these are the 7 targets. So target 1, as you can see here, which is a global disaster risk, the first one, A, or 1, is to substantially reduce global disaster mortality. So this means that when disasters do happen, we make sure that far fewer people die. We will check that the plan is working by seeing that fewer people die out of every 100,000 people in 2016 to 2030 compared to 2005 to 2015. So we need to compare the data that we have. So in order to check, are we achieving the goal of reducing global disaster mortality? The second target, which is to substantially reduce number of affected people. So in target 2, in the whole world, the plan aims to make sure that far fewer people's lives are affected by disasters. Again, we'll check how it's working by counting how many people are affected by disasters in 2016 to 2030 compared to 2005 to 2050, right? And target 3, which is to substantially reduce economic loss in relation to gross domestic index, right? Production index, GDP, is to reduce how much money is spent on responding to disasters and fixing broken stuff afterwards, right? And how much money is lost when disaster strikes because, for example, people miss work or shops close down. In this pandemic, it also happens, right? Economic loss in relation to the global, into the growth index, right, of the country, the national growth index. So we need to see how much money are we spending in the response of disasters as compared to preparedness as well. Some experts say that for every $1, right, $1 that we spend on preparedness plan, every dollar we spend on preparedness plan, we save about $9, $6 or $9 in the response, right? If we invest more in disaster preparedness, we save more in disaster response and recovery. Okay, and the fourth is to substantially reduce damage to critical infrastructure and services disruption, right? And to do that, we make sure that disasters cause less damage to essential services such as schools, right? Are schools prepared? Because in Malaysia, right, bila bencana berlaku saja, pusat pemindahan ialah apa? Pusat pemindahannya ialah sekolah. So, oleh sebab itu, apabila sekolah dijadikan sebagai satu pusat pemindahan, kanak-kanak, pelajar-pelajar tak dapat pergi sekolah kan? So, mereka akan hilang peluang untuk menimba ilmu, untuk belajar, ya, untuk menjadikan mereka lebih baik dalam semua, untuk memenuhi potensi mereka sebagai pelajar. Right? So they lose the opportunities to have access to education. And that's why education in emergencies is now a big area that the humanitarian actors are looking into. Hospitals, services such as schools, hospitals, train lines, major roads, and we will do this by developing their resilience, right? For example, making sure that all schools are built on solid grounds using strong materials by 2030 to ensure that the schools that we build is disaster proof or disaster resilient. And the fifth, which is E here, which is substantially increase the number of countries with national and local DRR strategies by 2020. So we make sure that a lot more countries have national local disaster risk reduction strategy by 2030. All right, that's how we check. Target 6, which is the target F, to increase international cooperations to developing countries. All right, how do we do that? We make sure that countries work together to prevent hazards from turning into risk. For example, if people in Japan have great ideas about making buildings safer in earthquakes, they should share these with people in Nepal, because Nepal last time had a big earthquake, right? So that they can do the same thing, right? If we have new techniques, technologies, or strategies to combat certain disasters or to combat certain hazards, we must share them. Kita jangan kedekut ilmu, kita jangan kedekut dengan pengetahuan yang kita tahu atau belajar daripada sejarah kita ataupun daripada peristiwa yang telah berlaku di negara kita. We must share this information, right, with other countries who are also going to experience these hazards such as flooding, right? And if people in St. Lucia know about digging trenches between their crops so that heavy rains run off instead of causing mudslides, they should share these ideas as well with people in Guatemala, in Malaysia, in Cameron Highlands, right? Kita tahu apa strategi-strategi untuk mengurangkan atau melindungi tanah kita daripada terjadinya bahaya tanah runtuh. Alright? And target 7, which is to substantially increase availability and access to early warning system and DRR information. So this is something that we're doing right now as well. Increase the number of people who can access and understand early warning systems, right? Early warning systems, there are many. One is you can download phone applications on early warning systems that we have in Malaysia as well, on flood warnings, or on tsunami warnings, so on and so forth, or on wildfires warnings, so on and so forth. Yeah. And this means that people need to cooperate and share information. For example, if the people in one island know a typhoon is coming, they must share this information with the radio, with TV and social media so that other people in the next island also know what's happening as well. All right, so there are 7 targets. These are the 7 targets that everyone needs to achieve, the international community needs to achieve by 2030 as part of the SDG as well. And the fourth, the next one is on the 4 priorities that they have. Right, these are the 4 priorities: understanding disaster risk. Priority 2, strengthening disaster risk governance to manage disaster risk, and investing in disaster risk reduction for resilience, enhancing disaster preparedness for effective response, and to build back better in recovery, rehabilitation, and construction. So for priority 1, the Sendai framework aims to make sure that people like you understand disasters, hazards, risk, and vulnerability. This will help everyone to spot dangers and to prepare for hazards and prepare them from becoming disasters, prevent them from becoming disasters, and to keep themselves, others, and their belongings safe. For priority 2, the Sendai framework aims to make sure that local leaders, governments, chiefs, and international agencies such as the IFRC are better organized when it comes to disasters. They should also have clear plans and established ways of working to prevent disasters from happening and to respond when a disaster strikes. For priority 3, investment, the Sendai framework aims to make sure enough money is spent on disaster risk reduction by both public, example, governments, and private, example, families, businesses, organizations, actors. It recognizes that this is a good way to spend money in the long term because it contributes to sustainable development, to the SDGs, right? For example, it might cost a bit more to build a new school from really good, strong materials. However, when an earthquake strikes, right, the strong schools will be okay. You spend more money to build a strong school, but when a disaster strikes, it's okay, it survived, right? Dia masih berdiri sekolah itu. But if you don't invest, then sekolah tu rosak, you kena bina balik semula, right? And you must build with more materials and so on, you actually lose more money. And the strong school will be okay so that youth such as you, students such as you, do not miss your education. The school won't have to be rebuilt, and the whole country will do better in the long run, because the generation of youths or students are not affected in terms of their education, right? Your lives are not affected or tidak terganggu atau tidak tergendala sementara, right? Jika sekolah anda mempunyai kapasiti untuk meneruskan aktiviti harian mereka. Priority 4, enhancing disaster preparedness. So the Sendai framework aims to make sure that everyone is ready when hazards strike, so that responses are more effective and better organized. When families, communities, and countries are fixing everything that broke in the disaster, the Sendai framework aims to help them build back better for the next time. All right. So that's it from my side. I know it's a bit, a lot of information to process and digest. But to help you understand better on what disaster risk reduction is all about, we will be exploring it through an activity later. But before we explore the activity, here are some of other safe steps for the next disaster, the next hazards, that I would like to introduce to you, brought to you by our partners in Prudential and National Geographic as well.
My name is Manny Pacquiao. All my life, I have been fighting to survive. I'm here to show you safe steps on how to prepare for natural disasters. Not all opponents let you know they are coming, but typhoons are one disaster with an early warning system. If you live near the coast or in a lightweight house, it is best to evacuate. So make sure you know where to go beforehand. Clear loose objects outside, as this can knock you out. Prepare sandbags and plastic sheeting to stop water getting in. Take shelter in a safe space. So if you are up against a typhoon, remember these safe steps and you too can be a survivor. For more knockout advice, visit our website, safesteps.com.
All right. So saya harap tadi anda lebih tahu sedikit. Jika tidak, jangan risau, kami masih ada satu aktiviti untuk pastikan anda tahu apa beberapa langkah yang anda boleh tahu untuk mengendalikan diri anda semasa bahaya berlaku, semasa a hazard happens. Alright. Dan I would like to check with our logistics crew and organizers. Do we have the list ready? All right, yes. I can see that it's ready. So jangan risau so we will have a breakout session for about 30 minutes or so. And through the activities that will be facilitated by our facilitators, we hope that you'll be able to understand better on some of the disaster risk reduction steps by knowing some of the skills and information that we should take whenever hazard strikes. Right? For those who are joining us on YouTube, do not fear. We also have the session. There will be live stream as well, one session in plenary, so that all of you will be able to understand better on how a hazard occurs. So with that, let's not waste time. Let us start the breakout session now. We open the rooms now, John?
Yes, Gerald, you have to join back plenary.
Yeah. All right, everyone.
Okay, please wait while we're moving all participants to the breakout room. Okay.
Please be patient as more people are being moved to the breakout rooms. In the meantime, have a drink, take some break. And once your friends have moved to the respective rooms, we will begin shortly. For those who are joining us on YouTube as well, do not fear. We will begin our session in plenary shortly as well. So earlier, everyone, we were talking about what are the terminologies of disaster is all about, the frameworks and the reasons why we need to learn, why is it important to learn all of the steps. Let's now go into something more practical in a sense of the actions that we can take, in the sense of what to do before, during, and after a disaster. So for those who are joining us from YouTube as well, I know that you are not really able to participate in this activity, but I hope that the students who are joining us from Zoom will be able to shed some more light on this activity, and you will be able to learn together on how to understand what are the steps to do before, during, and after the disaster occurs. After the disaster occurs. So I'm sure that most of you are quite familiar with Mural already on how to use it. Our organizer will be sharing with you the link in the chat box soon. And what I need you all to do is basically, once you have entered the link and have access to this Mural board, is for you to each one of you to pick one, right? Pick one sticky note and read the statement in the sticky note and reflect and think, where does this sticky note sits most suitable in the corresponding disaster, whether this activity or that statement should have been done before the disaster or during the disaster or after the disaster as well. Alright, kepada mereka yang tidak begitu faham bahasa Inggeris, jangan risau. So sekarang kami akan buat satu aktiviti untuk memperkenalkan anda lagi lebih tentang aktiviti dan langkah-langkah yang anda boleh ambil sebelum, semasa dan selepas sesuatu bencana berlaku. Dan apabila anda dibekalkan dengan link kepada platform ini nanti, anda hendaklah masuk ke dalam sistem ini, ke dalam platform link tersebut, dan cuba cari, telitikan satu pernyataan yang terdapat dalam post-it yang kuning itu, baca dengan teliti dan alihkan post-it itu kepada satu situasi yang anda rasa ia memadai atau ia padan dengan tindakan itu patut berada di bencana yang mana, dan juga di fasa sebelum, semasa ataupun selepas bencana berlaku. Alright. So if there are no further questions, we have already shared the link in the chat. So kindly click on the chat, right? Click on the link in the chat, and you may begin, right? Choosing one of the post-it notes. All of you, I know there's 144 of you, but try to look at what your friends are doing if you don't have a post-it note already, and move it to the appropriate. Each one of you should only move one, so that you give all your chance to your friends to move appropriately the ability to move the post-it notes. So please read carefully, right? Some of the statements are very long, all right? And I understand it is in bahasa Inggris, but kebanyakan sumber kita adalah dalam bahasa Inggeris, so cubalah Google Translate lah kalau boleh, dalam jika anda perlu, untuk memastikan anda padankan pernyataan yang anda dapat lihat kepada kotak yang sepatutnya. Alright, everyone. So take your time. I see how many people are here inside. Yeah, I can see everyone moving the stuff. So we will have about 30 minutes to do this and to discuss. Dan selepas ini kami akan bincang bersama, dan kita akan cuba telitikan setiap post-it note itu jika kita ada sempat masa, dan kita bincang bersama jika adakah is it in the correct position or not. So we will discuss. We will try to go through one by one later each post-it note, and we will discuss and decide, right, together, if each of the post-it notes that your friends have put it here is correctly placed or not. Right? I see a lot people are doing before. So let's see. What is the answer? All right, I'll give you up to 9:33. Sorry, 9:35 to complete the task. So take your time, read it well, and really think about what are the statements that you see, and accordingly be able to place it in the correct position. All right. And if you have any questions, please raise your hands and we can do translation as well if required. Yes, Devakar? What's the issue? I see your hand raised. You may also want to chat if you need. Right, I see everyone taking their time to look through it and to move around. I'll give you up to 9:35 before we try to go through everyone, and we will do it as soon as possible. All right. I see everyone is almost done, but some are still moving around things. Can't open the link. Tavakar says you can't open the link. Any ideas, John? Or is it too many people in the link already?
Not sure.
Tavakar, I'm not sure what's the issue there. I can't really assist. What does it say in your computer when you click on the link? Or it just doesn't open? Oh, you need to uninstall the Mural app. Are you using your phone perhaps?
Yeah, maybe she's using phone.
Yeah, you're using your phone, so that's why it's asking you to install the app. Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, you can install the app if you want to, but it's up to you, I would say.
Okay, guys, try to revisit the postage note that you have already put, because like some of the space are blank and it shouldn't be.
Yeah, I mean, probability wise, it shouldn't be blank. So you guys should really, really read carefully and relook at what you are doing, where you place your sticky note, right? Krish, do you have an issue? I see your hands raised. Do you want to type in the chat or not? Yeah. So yes. Can't join the link as well. Is it because you're using your phone and it's asking you to download an app as well? Yes, Devakar. I guess you are new. This program has a certificate, but you must fill in the attendance form and answer the questions that we have to confirm that you actually attended the session. You're using PC, so I'm not sure what is the error that you're seeing. Yeah, no worries, Devakar. I know you're new by the question, so don't worry. This program will have certificates as long as you follow the instructions and fill in the form correctly. All right, you got 2 more minutes, everyone. Have a last round of look at your sticky notes. Try your best to answer the questions. Most of it are very, I would say, logical, right? You don't need to be an expert in a disaster to know what are the certain things, but sometimes it's good to be reminded of what are the things that you need to do actually. All right? I'm sorry that some of you can't join. It's probably one, your computer capacity is not up to the up to par. When will the program finish, Devakar? It's approximately 10 o'clock. Every time we have our session is roughly 2 hours, give or take. All right. You have 1 more minute, guys. 1 more minute. 1 more minute. Yes, NYOG has gotten the accreditation and approved by KPM, so don't worry. Ministry of Education has already approved this. 1 more minute, 1 more minute, last round. I don't know why there's now a blank post-it, or did they delete the information inside?
Yeah, maybe. For those who accidentally delete, you can try to undo, press Ctrl+Z on your computer. Okay. Please, yeah.
All right, it's 9:35. Let's try to go into the first box, John. Let's not take too much time. We will need time to go through the document to the best possible.
Yep. We can start.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. So I hope that you have stopped doing what you are doing, and you will pay attention to the sharing session and discussion now of whether have this place been whether your friends have placed the correct post-it notes in the correct location. So number 1 is stay indoors and listen to the radio for weather updates. And somebody has put this one in the before phase. All right. So what do you think is correct? Is this correct here? Does anyone dispute this? All right. Okay, given the situation that it is a tropical storm, all right, and weather forecast can predict it. Yeah. I can see people who are trying to unmute. Please feel free to share who put it here and maybe share why do you think it's appropriately placed there. Anyone? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, as I said earlier, this is the correct spot for this post-it note. So yes, correct. Congratulations to whoever moved this into this location. It is correct. The second post-it note is if you evacuate your house, close all doors and windows, turn off the electricity, and take your survival kit. What do you guys think? one, first, is this appropriate for this disaster? And second, is it in the correct phase of the disaster? Is it before, during, or after? Stuart, I see your hands raised. Please feel free to unmute yourself.
I think it is right. I
Is that
think it's
you-
right
you
because
think it's right?
we cannot evacuate during the tropical storm.
Mhm.
We have to evacuate before the tropical storm.
Okay, all right. Okay, possible. But do you think, you will be requested to evacuate during a tropical storm? Remember, a storm is a very large area, right? And it moves very fast. When fast wind is blowing, do you think you will be advised to leave your house or to stay in your house and fortify your house? Yeah. You don't have to answer me, Stuart, but anyone else? Do you have any other opinions? If a tropical storm were to happen, right, let's say in East Malaysia, East coast of Malaysia, north of Malaysia, right, where we have now reports of tropical storms happening in those areas that, although not really affected yet, do you think you will be asked to travel or evacuate whenever there are high winds blowing? And if you remember earlier as well, some of the safe steps that we have already shared with you during the videos, if you recall, one of the safe steps mentioned here is this actually for a certain disaster. Anyone else?
You can also refer the chat for inputs.
Chat. Oh, sorry. Okay. I guess it should be some. Matthew from Selangor says that I guess it should be placed at the flood. Okay. Why? Matthew? Dashini? Lucille also says it's more suitable for flood, but which part? Why is it during the flood and which part? Isabel says during, and Lucille says before. So Lim Jia-ying from Johor says because need to turn off the electricity. So wow, when we turn off electricity, it's something to do with water most of the time, right? So do you think it's during or before? During, right? So when the flood is happening, so if we need to evacuate, you need to turn it off. All of your electricity, close your doors and windows so that your house is secure because you need to leave your house. Correct. That will be the most appropriate location, right? It must that step is appropriate for the flood situations, and it's only during that you need to take this step when if there is a decision to evacuate your house. All right. Next, John. Report to your community leader. Yeah, that is definitely correct. John already did so. All right, we definitely need to report to our community leader in the situation in your area. So if you're living in a kampong, so you report to the Ketua Kampung. If you're living in a longhouse, of course, you report to your leader. If you have a persatuan, you report to the leader of your persatuan perumahan, so on and so forth, so that they know the penduduk dalam satu kawasan tu semua selamat lah, right? And also to inform others of what is happening. The next is if you're outside, go to a safe place away from falling buildings, electrical posts, and trees. So when do you think it is? Yes. Krish, can you please be patient? You don't have to caps lock everything. We always will share the link later on. All right. If you are very impatient, you are kindly invited to leave if you don't. If you cannot be patient. All right. There's no connection to report the committee leader during the storm. Like how? So that could also happen, right? But as it's also good to stay connected, right? Sometimes during a storm, phone lines connections are still there, so it's not necessarily that the communication will be broken. All right. So if you're outside, go to a safe space, away from falling buildings. What kind of disaster can cause falling buildings? Anyone think about it? All right. The attendance link will be shared only at the end, so please be patient, right? Yes. Okay, let's not be sidetracked with the attendance link. We will definitely share it later. Can anyone share with me which situation do you think falling buildings will occur?
Tropical storm.
Tropical storms?
Tropical storm.
Do you think buildings will fall because of a tropical storm?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
earthquake, I believe.
It's possible.
Yeah, Stuart, I see you suddenly had the idea, light bulb, right, Stuart? So yes, it should be in the earthquake scenario, right? Where you was, the earth is shaking, right? Buildings are shaking, so high possibility the building will fall down. But which phase of earthquake do you think this must be done?
During.
During, exactly, correct. Why? Because if you're outside, you need to stay away from buildings, falling buildings, electrical posts that may fall down, and also trees that may fall on top of you, right? But of course, in buildings, we will see it later, right? So the next one, John, after, help your parents pack a survival kit. Do you think it place correct? This should be before, right?
It should be before.
And this should be before in your tropical storms as well, so that you have a go bag if you need a go bag. So you help your parents pack a survival kit if necessary. So it is correct. Avoid interrupting communication lines for rescue and relief operations. Now, where do you think this is suitable? I know some is not very clear, but try to think about it. What do you think is required so that you do not disturb communication lines for rescue and relief operations? Okay, this one may be a bit difficult, right? So let me narrow it down for you. So it should happen in the earthquake phase. All right, but where do you think that we should avoid, interrupting communication lines for this for rescue and relief operations? Calling 999 to report about your house broken or whatever it is, right? Because destruction is a lot during an earthquake, right? So you should not flood 999. When? Is it before when earthquake is happening? During when earthquake is happening, or after? Right? I see a lot of people answer during. Actually, no, right? It should be after. Why? Because after the earthquake has already happened. Yeah, after the earthquake has already happened, many people will call in 999. My house is on fire. The electric. My house has no electricity. All of these lines should only be for very important situations, such as somebody is trapped in the building, or somebody is trapped in the building most of the time, right? So we should keep the lines clear for really, really urgent situations, because when earthquake happens, there will be a lot of fires everywhere. So as long as no one's life is truly in danger, or your property is destroyed, so you don't need to report that. So avoid interrupting communication lines for rescue relief operation. Next is know the nearest evacuation center. Where do you think this sits?
Flood.
Flood, right? Is it before, during, or after?
Before.
Sorry? Before, right? So that you know where you need to evacuate to, right? But also flood, but also actually cyclones as well, right? It's also possible. So you can be, since it's already on the tropical storms there, we can be
Before.
Yeah, also before. Okay.
Yeah,
Next
actually we
one.
have multiple similar as well.
Yeah, multiple ones. But since that one is already there, yeah. So good. Correct on both sides. Yeah.
You need to pass
Okay,
forward.
help your parents pack a survival kit for this one again. It's correct, right? We must always help your parents pack a survival kit in every situation. Disconnect appliances in your house that may be reached by the flood. So here the answer is there. It is definitely a flood situation. Disconnect appliances in your house. Is it before, during, or after? Do you think it's correct here? Any idea?
During.
During. Why would you say it's during? Any ideas, guys?
Before.
I mean, you would not disconnect your appliance before.
During, yeah. So whenever the flood is happening already, the flood is coming, so you need to disconnect it. So it'll be during the flood itself. Right? Remember, before is your preparation phase. During is when it's already happening. You need to do something to make sure it doesn't become worse. Right? Take steps to mitigate. Next is report to your community leader the situation in your area. Of course, again, as the same for all also is during, right? You can move it already. Then if your house is in a flood prone area, be updated on the weather and tide heights. So this is also correct. You need to be in the know. You must stay updated with the latest weather information. All right? Because you already know that your house, your area is a flood prone area. Next, know the nearest evacuation center. So also the same, you need to know where is the nearest evacuation center in the flood situation. All right. Then do not go into the flood water to avoid diseases and accidents. So that is also correct. Because in the water, you know, sometimes in Malaysia, kita tengok kan banyak orang suka mandi-mandi dalam kawasan yang banjir. Tapi ada banyak benda yang kotor dalam air itu kan kita tak tahu sebab dia sudah campur dengan rumah, dengan tandas rumah. So semua bahan sisa, najis, kencing semua sudah campur dalam air banjir itu. So jangan mandi-mandi sebab kamu mungkin mendapat penyakit berjangkit juga daripada air banjir tersebut. Jangan minum sebab bila kita mandi-mandi kita mungkin terminum percikan beberapa air itu masuk ke dalam mulut dan kita akan masuk ke dalam kita mungkin ada cerit-berit dan lain-lain. Alright. Keep items, especially the important ones, higher up off the floor. So before. Is it during or before? Right? Before. You must really keep important items. If you know you're in a flood-prone area, if you know that you have important items that if it gets wet, it will be destroyed or it will be damaged. So you need to plan before that already. Right? Thank you very much for sharing that. I don't know who was it, but yeah, thank you. Next is move towards higher ground immediately. Are you sure that you need to move to higher ground immediately for a flood situation? Okay, apart from flash floods, but does floods happen suddenly? What do you think? Which scenarios? Which scenarios do you think is Chong? Which scenario do you think you need to move to higher ground among the other disasters? Is it earthquake? Yeah, right. You definitely need to move to higher ground, right? In tsunami situations. Thank you to whoever who shouted out tsunami. But when?
During.
Yeah, during the disaster is happening. So whenever tsunami is happening during the tsunami, you must quickly find higher ground because tsunami, the waves are very high most of the time. Flood, the water comes up slowly, but it causes a lot of destruction. So you don't have to immediately run to the higher ground, right? So you can still walk. Sometimes you can still walk in the flood because the flood levels are very low. Next, if you're inside your house, stay under a study table or a door frame and keep away from windows and possible falling objects. Again, falling objects is the clue here. In what situations, right? In earthquake. So earlier we already discussed if you're outside, what you need to do. So in this case, this is during as well. If you're inside, you need to know what to do as well. If you're inside a building, you need to find a study table, right? even though, yeah, Malaysia, we don't have it here in Malaysia a lot, but in Sabah, right, our friends in Sabah need to know this information as well because it's important. It happened before in Sabah, it may happen again. We never know. All right, unplug appliances after use. Where does this sit on?
Before.
Is it in floods?
Before.
Before, you say.
Yeah, before, but which disaster?
Yeah, are you sure it's in that correct disaster or not?
Before fire.
No.
Before.
Before fire. I
Before
heard
fire.
fire, right? Yeah,
Yep.
because
Before fire.
yes, because that might be a risk. That might be a exposure, a risk that causes the fire itself. All right, very good. Next, we will go quickly. It's almost time's up. We'll try to go all. If not, I will quickly just get the answers. So, okay, if your house was affected, make sure that it is safe before you enter. So, in this case, is what? It is earthquakes, right? If your house is affected, you do not know whether the building is still safe to enter. So, but because you left something behind or you want to find somebody inside your house, so make sure it's safe before you enter. Next. Do not turn off the electricity switch, not unless you are sure it is dry and safe to do so. This is what?
After flood.
Are you sure? Are you
During.
sure it's after a flood? Yeah, I'm also. Yeah. Yes, correct. It is after a flood because you don't know which electrical appliance was affected, right? Correct. Damaged area, unless it's safe to return. Report any fallen posts. Yes. That is also applicable. Then as soon as you notice, Chong,
Yes.
everyone is back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Flooded area, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. So
Then as soon as you notice the warning signs such as the ground shaking, here, yes, get out of the building already. Yes, correct. Ground shaking is the clue and it might be before. Participate in drills and simulation is during, sorry.
Yep. Can we wrap up this?
Okay. All right. So I see that most of you are already clear of what you need to do during a disaster, before, during, and after disaster. So I hope that this activity, although I know that most of you are not able to complete all of it, but I can tell that you already know, right, the steps to take. And we'll be sharing more resources later for you to find out more what are the actual steps that you need to take during, before, during, and after disaster as well. So don't worry. So let us continue now. For the sake of time, we are towards the end of our session. I know that more of you, I know that all of you are more inclined to want to know more, but time doesn't allow us. So let us continue on with our session towards the end. All right, welcome back to our other friends as well who came back from the session, from your breakout sessions. So welcome back. We'll be proceeding now to share with you some of the other resources that we have with all of you, which is the Safe Steps campaign that we have launched together with Prudence Foundation and also National Geographic. So these are some of the materials that you can find online for free with videos and safety cards and information on what to do before, during, and after disaster. And it's free to use. Of course, you can download, you can share it with your friends, you can plan, online meetings for your BSMM clubs, right? Youth clubs as a weekly event too. And it's also available in many languages, right? We have English, we have Bahasa Malaysia, and we also have Chinese as well, translated materials and videos that you can use for your lessons or sharing purposes with your friends and also for teachers to use as well, right? Cikgu-cikgu, guru-guru untuk sekolah menengah bolehlah menggunakan semua sumber yang kami kongsikan dalam sini secara percuma dalam bahasa masing-masing untuk menggunakan sebagai aktiviti Persatuan Bulan Sabit Merah Malaysia, right? Selain daripada itu, apart from that, there's also, right? I know every youth, every secondary school students and youths love to play games, right? So there is a game actually created by the United Nations Agency for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNDRR, to better understand what are the steps, how does the Sendai framework actually applies, what are the steps to mitigate, to prepare, to mitigate the effects of a disaster. And you can simply scan this QR code or go to www.stopdisastergame.org to play this game. And they are given different scenarios. You have hurricanes, you have tsunamis, you have earthquakes, so on and so forth. You will play a game, you have some objectives to achieve, and you will be given, a scoring of how well you did, whether you pass or you fail as a disaster planner, right? Whether you plan very well, you as a disaster strategist, whether you strategize your policies and your buildings safely or not. So please take some time as well to access this website for free. It's also for free. You can play online. You don't need to download anything at all. So you can use it for free. So kepada cikgu-cikgu dan pelajar-pelajar sekalian, anda juga boleh melayari link ini untuk mengetahui lebih tentang bagaimana aktiviti-aktiviti ataupun perilaku yang anda boleh lakukan untuk memastikan apabila bencana ataupun apabila bahaya berlaku, impak bencana tersebut tidaklah begitu teruk, dan anda juga akan dapat ada juga beberapa objektif yang anda perlu capai, dan juga anda juga akan dinilai dari segi prestasi, berapa orang mati, berapa orang cedera, berapa infrastruktur yang musnah, dan anda juga akan diberikan nilai lulus atau gagal dalam simulasi ataupun dalam permainan tersebut juga. Alright, so these are all free for you to use. Feel free to reach out to us as well if you require more information on what disaster risk reduction is all about, and we'll be more than happy to share it with you as well. We're now towards the end, so we have one more tips for you to share with you. So let's hear from Manny.
All my life, I have been fighting to survive. I'm here to show you 6 steps on how to prepare for natural disasters. Preparation is key to overcoming any opponent, so make sure you have an emergency kit ready in case you need to evacuate. Include water, food, first aid, and basic hygiene items like soap. Take some clothing, a blanket, and rain gear. Add a flashlight, matches, and a radio. Don't forget to put important papers like ID in a plastic bag. Stack some cash in your bag and you're good to go. So if you are up against a natural disaster, remember these 6 steps and you too can be a survivor. For more knockout advice, visit our website, safesteps.com.
All right, so that's how you're going to prepare your grab bag as well. I'll go back. Now for the session that everyone is waiting for, which is the Kahoot session. We are towards the end. Please bear with me. We'll be over time a bit. We'll be expected to be 15 to 20 minutes late, slightly more than that. So let us start now to share the game quiz. So sekarang adalah sesi Kahoot. So sediakan alat peranti anda yang satu lagi yang lain supaya kita dapat mempercepatkan sesi kita untuk kali ini. So give me a few minutes. So please prepare your other device if you'd like to have your mobile phone or tablets so that we can begin playing the game as soon as it loads. All right, thank you so much, guys. I still see that a lot of people are still joining us. Thank you. I know it's 10 o'clock already. I apologize for the delay, but I know that everyone is excited and it's important. It's also the most important that if you lasted this long, that you stay to the end so that you'll be able to access the attendance link. So please join or go open a browser to go to kahoot.it or join through the Kahoot app and enter the game pin 8766401. I'll give up to 10:06, right? 10:06, 4 more minutes for you to join. All right, I'm sure all of you are able to join very quickly. and this is not something new to all of you. So we begin this game shot at 10:06, and you have to answer 15 questions, right? And I hope that you paid attention earlier to the terminologies a lot. And also, if you cannot pay attention to this, don't forget, pay attention to these questions now, because the same questions will be asked also for your quiz, for your attendance links. So please do not forget as well. Again, our sponsors for today's session again is by Camp and Apparel's uniform Sendirian Berhad, or more commonly known as Outpost uniforms, whereby the first place winner will get a 30 ringgit e-voucher, followed by 25 ringgit for second place, and 20 ringgit for third place, 15 ringgit for fourth place, and 10 ringgit e-vouchers for the fifth place. So there are 5 winners to be able to win. And now that you're all going back to school, I think these e-vouchers will be very, very important for you to purchase your uniforms as you are going back to school. All right. So we are at 800 mark already. It's 10:03. Another 3 more minutes, guys. I hope that you'll be able to join. For those who are joining on YouTube, please, only students should join this game. Yeah, for the teachers, parents, and VAD members, we do not encourage you. We highly do not recommend you to join the session, because this is specifically for secondary school students, and the level of questions prizes are meant for secondary school students as well. However, please feel free to stay on to look at the questions and test your own knowledge, but please do not try to affect the results of the Kahoot game. Alright. So kepada semua yang baru saja masuk, sila pastikan anda make sure the names that you have inputted is a name that we can identify with as well, so that we can contact the winners. And later, for the winners, please don't forget to screenshot your position, so that we can identify you and you can confirm with us your identity, that you are indeed the correct winner for this round of Kahoot as well. All right, we are almost at, we have 1 more minute. There's 990 people joining. All right, I'm not sure if it's going to be more than that, but please quickly join so that we can start as soon as possible. It's 10:05. We have less than 1 minute now. I'm going to start the game shot when it is 10:06. All right. All right. We have 10:05 right now. We have 1 more minute. And it's 10:06 right now. So I'll count down now before we start the session. So let's start the game in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's begin. For those who are still joining, feel free to join. No trouble. You'll still be able to participate in the games as we are going through the quiz as well. So first question, we have only 15 questions to answer. Which of the following is not an answer in the statement shown below? Remember earlier about the definitions, right? What is a hazard? A or that may not cause loss, life, or so you need to select what is not the answer for the 3 blanks that I have highlighted there. Yes, correct. It's not an organic, yeah. So the answer is, it is a process. It is either a process, phenomenon, or human activity. All right, it's not something that is organic. Okay, let's see who are the winners. Jiva is now leading. Next question. How do hazards occur? Are they natural only, or are they a combination of natural and human-made, or is it human-made only, or is it something that is an act of God? All right, tindakan daripada Tuhan. Correct. It's a combination of natural and human-made activities. All right, next. Which of the following is not, again, is not an answer in the statement shown below? What is disaster? A serious disruption of the functioning of a community or a society at any scale due to hazardous events interacting with conditions of and leading to one or more of the following: human, material, economic, environmental. So what is it not there? We remember. Okay, risk, right? The answer is risk. So don't forget. I know it's slightly difficult, but if you paid attention, you will definitely know the answer. Again, the same thing, which is not an answer. Yeah. So what is capacity? It's a combination of all the strengths, attributes, skills, or resources. So what did you not see in the names here? All right. Yeah, skills, attributes was mentioned in the definition. Valerie leading now. Congratulations. Which of the following is not an answer? Again, the same thing for definition. So what is vulnerability? The conditions determined by what? Physical, economic, spiritual, or social? So which is not the answer? And environmental factors. Yes, correct. So spiritual is not the answer, yeah? Quite clear cut. All right. Next, again, the same statement. What is not an answer? What is exposure? The situation of what? People, facilities, housing, or infrastructure, production capacities, and other tangible human assets located in a hazard-prone area. So what did you not see in the definition earlier? Yeah. People, remember, exposure, if there's more people in a certain area, that is a hazard-prone area, it is an exposure, higher exposure, it's not facilities. All right, I think this is the last one for disaster risk. The potential loss of life or destroyed or damaged assets which could occur to a system, society, or community in a specific period of time, determined probabilistically as a function of what? So you must remember the equation. So it's disaster, right? So disaster risk involves vulnerability, hazard, exposure, and capacity. So disaster is not part of the equation in disaster risk. Complete the equation below. Disaster equals what? Remember what I said earlier. Is it risk plus capacity? Is it vulnerability plus capacity? Is it hazard plus exposure? Or is it vulnerability plus hazard? Yes, a lot of you got it, which is good. It is not hazard and exposure, yeah? It is the vulnerability and the hazard as well that makes it even worse. It's a disaster. Grace Lynn is keeping her place. Question 9. Which of the following is an activity of mitigation? Remember the concept of mitigation? To reduce the impact of disasters. So what do you think here is to? That attributes are related to the mitigation phase of the disaster risk management. Yes, raising of homes in flood-prone areas. That's how you mitigate disasters. All right, congratulations. Which of the following is an activity for preparedness? These are the 4 phases, right? So what is the activity corresponding to? Relief item distribution, emergency shelters, emergency water and sanitation facilities, or community disaster simulations? Quite straightforward, right? All right, yes. So it's community disaster simulations, right? The rest are all related to what activity? The activity of the response phase. So yeah. All right, we have Ke Ying leading. So which of the following is an activity for response? Is it vulnerable capacity assessments, logistic preparation, search and rescue, or early warning systems establishment? Yes, search and rescue is an activity for the response, the acute phase of the disaster. The most immediate part of the disaster is the response phase. Okay, Ke Ying is leading. Which of the following is an activity for recovery? So, is it livelihoods program? Is it floodplain mapping? Is it reinforced tornado safe rooms? Or is it climate change mitigation? So, do you remember which was it earlier? 4 activities, yeah? Yes, livelihood programs. So people who have lost their farms, people who have lost their their animals, right, that they rear, right, the farm, the plantations that they work, so we can help them with their livelihood program by giving them more seeds to replant their goods or to supply them with the goats and cows again to rear the animals in the farm. So which of the following should not be in a grab or go bag? Is it a first aid kit? Is it a battery powered radio? Is it food or is it Nintendo Switch? I think it's fairly obvious, right? The answer is definitely, what is definitely not important is your Nintendo Switch, although you know, although I know that you all love your gaming devices. All right, Ke Ying is still in the lead. Second last question, guys. How many targets are contained in the Sendai framework? Is it 1, 5, 3, or 7? Do you remember? It's pretty straightforward, right? I kept repeating this number earlier. All right, yes, there are 7. Why people think it's 5? I don't think I mentioned any. There's no mention of 5 earlier at all. So there were 7 targets to be achieved in the Sendai framework. All right. Next, we have from Negeri Sembilan Farah leading. Last question, guys. How many priorities are contained in the Sendai framework? Right. There were 7 targets, but how many priorities? Is it 2? Is it 6? Is it 4? Is it 8? What is the answer? Do you recall which is it? Yes, correct. There were 4 priorities contained in the Sendai framework. Congratulations now. Let's see who are the winners for this round of the 9th NYOG session. The 3rd place is Grace Lim. The 2nd is Ike Zhu Yao, and the 1st goes to, wow, 15 out of 15. Farah, congratulations. You got every single answer correct, and the runner-up goes to Chin and Mel. So please, to all the winners, take a screenshot of your screens right now to verify that you are the winners, and please reach out to the organizers at nyog@redcrescent.org.ny so that we can facilitate your claim of your prizes. All right. Congratulations to all of our 5 winners. Please now give us your feedback on the questions that we have today. I know it's slightly difficult, but it seems that it's not that difficult because the first place winner still got all 15 questions correct. All right. So please give your feedback. 34% were correct. All right. And as usual, also there are some housekeeping information that I will share with you as well. we will be sharing with you the attendance link now as well, I guess. Our organizers have already posted it in the chat. So for those who are in Zoom, please, of course, I think the chat has been disabled, so you may access the attendance link as well. Please do not share it with anyone else. This attendance link in Zoom is meant purely for those who are attending in Zoom. YouTube, those who are joining us on YouTube, don't worry, you will not be left out as well. Kindly do not type anything else in the comment section in YouTube, because our organizers will be sharing the links for YouTube with you as well. Please fill in the information correctly, and also input your school code as well. And of course your name and your IC as well correctly. Answer the questions. The questions are not difficult. The questions are not something new. It's basically the answers we have just discussed earlier as well. It's just to prove that you actually attended the session, to verify that you actually attended the session and know what was the contents of the section as well. All right, and don't forget, upon submission of your group attendance sheet, there will be a confirmation email that will be sent to you that we have received your submission as well. So if you did not receive automatic reply of receipt for your attendance, you probably didn't submit it correctly. Please feel free to submit it again. For those who have already submitted the forms, don't worry, you'll be able to look out and search for your certificates in our specially designed Malaysian Red Crescent online program certificate lookup system, new system. So all you need to do is key in your IC number with the dashes as well, or your email address that you used to register, that you used to fill in your attendance sheet, right? And these forms, this system can be accessed through this link at bit.ly/MRCS certificate. And the forms, the certificates will only be generated in 5 working days. Today is already Wednesday, so within 5 working days. So Thursday, you have up to next Wednesday to double check in the system. So please do not reach out to the organizers later tonight or tomorrow or the day after tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday if you have not seen your certificate in the system yet. Okay, so we will also announce to all the teachers once the certificates are ready, and you can look it up on the system as well. All right. For those who are joining until now, it's already 10:20 on the dot. Thank you so much for spending 2 hours and 20 minutes with us. Today is a very special day indeed for International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. We really appreciate your active participation. Thank you for staying to the end. Please like, follow, and subscribe our social media, especially our YouTube, because always our NYOG sessions are always streamed on YouTube as well. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell button so that you are informed whenever we have any live sessions or any new videos that we have shared. We would like to share with you as well. All right, and our next NYOG session, which is our 10th session, is on the 21st of November, and it will be our second last NYOG event of the year. So we are coming towards the end of the year and also coming towards the close of the NYOG series. It is our 9th session this round, and we really, really heartfelt thanks to everyone who has joined us since the first NYOG, a faithful audience and follower of our sessions. To those who are still new, it's again not too late. We have 2 more sessions to join us as well. So please feel free. Again, in order to stay updated, please like, follow, subscribe our social media. We have Facebook page, we have Instagram account, we have Twitter account, and also our YouTube channel as well. So for NYOG related specifically, please join our YouTube, subscribe and like as well videos. Okay. That's it. We are towards the end. Thank you for those who are joining us on YouTube.